Welcome back to the second part of the program. And just to recap our Twitter poll question this afternoon, we're asking you, how have mobile-based taxi hailing services impacted on your budgeting and preferred modes of travel? Well, do send us in your feedback on our question this afternoon. Remember to also tag along at KTN News, or you can tweet me at Agena Abi, and we'll be able to sample some of your views as we move along with this broadcast. Well, we want to dive in right now on a Week in Perspective conversation, and we are now joined by Ken Gishinga, who is a very familiar face here, and many thanks for always making time for us.
Thanks for inviting me, Abi.
So, Ken, this week we've seen major deals being signed between Kenya and the United States government, totaling to about 10 billion shillings that will be going towards real estate, healthcare, as well as transport. So from this particular agreement you're seeing, what do you read in between where the United States is trying to play catch-up of sorts in order to reclaim her place when it comes to bilateral trade?
For me, it's a ray of hope. I think the relationship between the US and Kenya is over 50 years old. The fact that this was the first summit in over 50 years of relationship, I think it was a bit worrying. It showed to me that, as you say, the US is playing catch-up. And catch-up to whom? It's to China. Because over the last 10 years, China has made incredible inroads in Africa. That said, I think it was a welcome initiative. 10 billion shillings, $10 billion. That's a lot of money in terms of investment, especially for a country that suffers from high youth unemployment. The need for foreign direct investment in this country is so urgent. And I think that was what we saw yesterday in terms of the speeches, the posturing, are exactly what we need to get to that double-digit growth that you always talk about.
All right. And Ken, still staying with this, we did also take cognizance of the fact that Kenya is set to start direct flights between JKIA and JF Kennedy International Airport. And there's a lot of optimism around this, but will it really benefit the SMEs?
It will, in the sense that it will open up a new market. Remember, the United States is the largest market on this planet. It's a almost $20 trillion economy. So even if you can get a 1% of that slice, especially to our horticulture sector, especially to people who export food products, absolutely, I think it will make a big dent in terms of progress, but not just to the SMEs, but even to the entire food chain that relies on the SMEs. These are the small-scale farmers who supply the SMEs, and the SMEs that supply the big manufacturing companies. So there's a whole pipeline of benefits, but I think still, as you say, it's early days. It will take a long time before momentum really builds up, but I think it's certainly the direction this country should have started on a long time ago.
And Ken, one of the things that came out at that particular event, President Uhuru Kenyatta stamping his authority on graft. He at one point said that even if his brother is implicated, he will carry his own cross. Are we seeing a commitment from the presidency that the war on graft has to end?
We are certainly seeing a more assertive President Uhuru Kenyatta. Remember in the last corruption summit that was held at State House, we saw a very resigned president when he asked, what do you want me to do? But now what we saw yesterday is a much more energized president who's ready to really take on corruption. So we really hope that it's not lip service, that really the DPP, the prosecutors, the judiciary can follow through. And absolutely, that's what everybody wants to see in this country.
All right. And Ken, it cannot go well without us talking about sugar. It has, of course, been the talking point throughout the week, where we've seen some arrests being made, and the Kenya Bureau of Standards Managing Director, Charles Ongwae, was actually arrested alongside other officials from the state agency. And right now, there's a sense of uncertainty in the markets where sugar prices in some quarters, we are getting reports that some vendors have actually hiked the prices for the simple reason that there's a shortage. And looking at the bigger picture, where Kenya is right now in sort of a nexus where we have sugar cane farmers who are seeing what is happening, where cheap imports coming through, they are being repackaged. On the other end, we're also getting allegations that the sugar is contaminated with mercury, lead, copper. Where are we getting it wrong when it comes to managing the sugar sector?
I think it's a historical problem, but of course corruption, as you say, has been a big part of it. Sugar and maize are such critical products in this economy, and you and I have discussed this in the past because it touches the staple food of the ordinary mwananchi. And the moment you disrupt that supply, obviously you touch the local mwananchi at in a very sensitive part. Now, what are we going to do? Obviously, you have to have a competitive sugar sector. Uganda, the big Indian farmers in Uganda have a very competitive sugar industry, and I've never really understood why we don't sort of try and benchmark with what they do. Is it the facilities? Is it in remunerations? Is it in the legislation? There are a lot of it's a multi-layered problem. My thinking in this particular issue is corruption really has been the main thing. Of course, what we saw, the incidences of the MD being arrested, I think for a lot of people it doesn't end there. I think people need to understand the entire supply chain in terms of from the ordinary farmer, what is the entire process till it gets to your table. And for that lack of clarity is really what gives people a lot of discontentment.
All right. Interesting insights there, Ken. Really appreciate your input on this
Always
subject.
a pleasure.
Thanks for coming over.
Thank you very much.
Well, Ken Gishinga there, the economist at Mentoria Consulting, and he also has a very, very interesting approach towards how Kenya is performing when it comes to addressing sugar issues. Well, let's take you to some reports that related to part of the conversation we were just having now. And Kenya has inked trade deals worth 10 billion shillings set to spur investments in energy, healthcare, and the real estate sectors. The deals were signed at the inaugural American Chamber of Commerce Economic Summit and expected to give President Uhuru Kenyatta's Big Four agenda the much-needed impetus. So what does this mean for the country? Here's Bo.
Yeah, you can continue signing.
The putting of pen to paper marked the climax of the AmCham summit as Kenya secured global commitment from the United States government, with deals totaling to a tune of $100 million being signed.
Currently aware, the balance of trade currently is in favor of the United States. But we in Kenya are optimistic that we will see a significant improvement in our trade with the United States.
I am heartened and enthusiastic with the possibilities present here in Kenya.
The trade deals, which cut across the public and private sector projects, will see funding being channeled towards establishing of a dialysis center at a cost of $20 million, with $40 million going towards construction of 1,200 housing units by Unity Homes in Kiambu County at Tatu City.
We want to attract more investments. And what we have told the Americans is that Kenya is ready for business.
This summit is yet another step forward and a great opportunity for us to deepen the economic partnership.
And as the two countries reaffirmed their willingness to do business, the balance of trade places the United States as Kenya's 7th largest trading partner, with overall trade standing at 104 billion shillings for the year 2017. Trade barriers such as import tariffs remain key hurdles for Kenyan exports to crack the US market. Signing of the trade deals between Kenya and the United States of America signals a new dawn for the country, even as Kenya tries to diversify her trading partners. Reporting for KTN Business, I'm Abi Agina. Well, a lot of good news there when it comes to trade. And still talking trade, Kenya's total exports to Hong Kong jumped a whooping 359.32% in 2017 to hit $62 million, or just about 6.2 billion Kenya shillings, on the back of renewed efforts to improve the balance of trade, with the bulk of exports dominated by raw hides and skins, leather, edible fruits and nuts, vegetables, fish and tobacco. According to statistics from the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the amount of goods Hong Kong exports into Kenya increased 7% to 6.6 billion shillings, meaning the balance of trade still is in favor of Hong Kong to maintain growth momentum. Stakeholders who attended the ongoing Hong Kong Lifestyle Expo were informed that the Hong Kong Trade Development Council had opened a Nairobi office to facilitate trade between the two entities.
Market, they need to get rid of the import tax. The import tax is definitely very high. So if they can produce or even make use of the local manufacturing opportunities, yeah, they will have more profit margin.
The opportunities that the Kenyan investors really could look up through Hong Kong Trade Development Council is, as we all know, Hong Kong Trade Development Council is the financial hub of the whole world. Kenya being the innovation, very innovative, and the sectors that we know that we are being called the Silicon Valley of Africa. We should also be much more, what I can probably gain is more like the hub of Africa.
And as Kenya hosts the 2018 Total Motor Show, different exhibitors in East Africa are urging the government to work on the automotive policy so that business are no longer affected. Over the time, the policy keeps changing when there is transitions in government. This has brought about confusion in the industry on what policies to rely in the manufacture and importation of spare parts.
There's a lot of things that you have to consider when an auto policy is being implemented and in a country, and also for East Africa. There's duties that we have to consider, the tariffs of bringing a car in the country, the investment that we have to bring in, the type of employment and incentives that government should implement. But remember, as an organization, we don't implement auto policies, the government that implements auto policy, and we have as an organization to oblige to the legislative framework.
You can only try and fight it in that way. You can probably lobby with government and so on, but I don't think it'll be very successful. I think you probably have more success in bringing the age down of used cars than to be imported, than actually stopping counterfeit parts or counterfeit TVs or whatever the case might be.
Well, we want to do a recap of our Twitter poll question, and today we're asking you, how have mobile-based taxi hailing services impacted on how you budget and how you use taxis as your preferred mode of transportation for traveling? Well, that is our opinion poll question today, and we continue to receive your feedback on this as we get into an interesting conversation right now with a man that is known as Bartholomew Shivashi, who is the GM for Taxify, joining us live here in studio. Well, let's now dive into that conversation. Many thanks, Shivashi, for joining us. And just to start us off, paint for us a picture of the trends you're seeing when it comes to people using taxis in urban cities across Africa.
So, I mean, the ride-hailing industry is quite interesting. Ride-hailing is actually very young in the industry. It's about 3-4 years old. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the biggest shifts that is happening in the industry right now is consumers are beginning to realize that I do not need to own a car. Mm. And that has always been the biggest change. So once consumers begin to realize that ride-hailing or taking out their phone and requesting a Taxify is going to be cheaper than for them to own and maintain a car, then there's going to be that shift. And over time, you're seeing more and more consumers begin to realize this. So we are seeing increased ridership. We're seeing a lot more people beginning to use these kind of things. I think that's one of the biggest trends that has been happening in the in the industry.
And if you had to share with us some statistics, Shivashi, how many rides have been made so far from where you stand, and of course, what does this signify in terms of the growth?
I mean, well, so I've been in the industry for quite a while, about 3-4 years. And just talking about the size of the multiple of growth that we have seen has been incredible. So, it might be difficult of course, to share exact numbers, but it's in the hundreds of thousands of riders every single week take out their phone, request a car, complete a trip. And then in terms of drivers, we tens of thousands of drivers every single day come to our platform to make a living. So just the growth, both from the driver side and the rider side, the growth has been immense.
All right. Yeah. And to continue with this growth trajectory as a company, what are you looking towards in terms of tapping into new opportunities, be it in motorbikes and trying to reach out to new regions where the services are not available?
Yeah, I think Taxify has been at the forefront of innovation. So I think one of the biggest things that we have done is we are confident enough to go to categories that other people have considered they're not very comfortable with. So a few months ago, we launched Taxify Border. And one of the questions that we faced was, there's all these safety questions around borders, how are you going to tackle these kind of questions? But we've been able to build a very layered approach towards addressing safety, towards addressing security, towards addressing emergencies. And we are seeing riders prefer to use Taxify Border because it's extremely fast to get around the city. So that kind of innovation, that we speak to the city. We launch products that have a great fit with the cities within which we operate. Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things that a client told us a few weeks ago is, previously she could never attend 3-4 meetings in a single day in Nairobi. But now with Taxify Border, she can attend 4 to 5 meetings in a single day. So these kind of products that have a great fit with the city are one arm of innovation. Mm-hmm. The other arm of innovation is finding affordable ways for people to get around. So recently we launched Taxify Go, which is smaller, fuel-efficient vehicles that don't compromise the quality or the experience of the rider. And again, we're seeing massive growth in there. So we've been, one, innovative, expanding the suite of products that we offer. And then secondly, also entering into new markets. We've gone into Uganda, we've gone into Tanzania, we've opened another city in Tanzania, we're in Mombasa as well. Our goal is to make affordable, efficient transportation available to everyone and to make it accessible and affordable to everyone. Mm-hmm. Yes. And
Shivashi, looking at the broader scheme of things, right now competition, of course, is quite intense in the taxi hailing apps. We have the Ubers, we have little cab, and how do we see this sort of eating into reducing the cost of traveling at the end of the day?
Amazing. So, one of the things we position ourselves on is ensuring that drivers get the strongest earnings and ensuring that riders have the most affordable way to get around. And just because we take a slightly less commission than the competition, that proposition is very powerful, and it's very easy for us to communicate that proposition. Now, that is one of the things that has set us apart from the competition. Now, I understand that the competitive landscape is, it's getting more complicated. There's all these new players coming in, but we seek to differentiate ourselves on those two things. And competition is a good thing because it expands the size of the industry. It gives riders wide options. It gives drivers wide options. So it's a good thing. And I think in the future there's going to be even a lot more players getting into the industry. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. And finally, Shivashi, looking at right now where Kenya is. Other than issues to do with transportation, perhaps what is that one thing you'd like to see change on regulation by government?
That's a great question. We always take the approach of, we think governments need to take a consultative approach towards solving transportation issues. I'm not saying they haven't done that before, but the government is committed towards fixing congestion in the city, making transportation more efficient. We have the same goal. And I think when you start talking to each other, the progress is going to be much faster because ride-hailing companies sit on a ton of data. So, for example, let's say you, Abby, we can tell the trip that, on a weekend you take a trip from point A to point B, you go to this mall, you prefer to use this route. When you have that information for hundreds of thousands of people in Nairobi, that information can be harnessed to improve the way we design our roads, the way we design where the routes that buses use, the way we design public transportation.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone else has that information. So when governments begin to take this consultative approach, this all-inclusive approach, where we also have a seat at the table and we're able to share the data, share the insights that we've seen, then the policies that we make, the regulation that comes out of that is much stronger and much more efficient.
All right. Many thanks, Bartholomew Shivashi, talking to us on trends around urban city transport at a time where we are seeing a lot of shifts on how people commute within the country. Well, let's take a recap on our Twitter poll question, where we are asking, how have mobile-based taxi hailing services impacted on how you budget and how you move when you're in the city? I don't know if you have the results, Diana, on how we have polled on this question, because it is heading to a weekend, and of course a lot of activities happening with people transporting across the country. Well, that's the results so far, Shivashi, as you can see. 69% saying, actually giving a positive assertion that taxi hailing services have really impacted on their budgeting and preferred modes of traveling. 7% saying it has negatively affected them. 24% saying they do not know. Well, that's where we want to bring it to a close here on the show this afternoon. It's been a pleasure bringing you the business news throughout the week. Well, do you have yourselves a lovely weekend, and may it be productive, even as you take a break from the daily hustle and bustle of Nairobi. My name is Abia Gina. I leave you now in the hands of our Swahili team that is coming up with Mbiu ya KTN.